I want to talk today about my favorite subject, and that is the soul. The soul and the theme of the quote unquote lost soul and how it is saved. With the last 3 years having been on the journey of soul retrieval, I feel like I can speak on this with a degree of authority and experience, and first-hand knowledge or gnosis. First of all, we have to find out what is the soul. If you would ask yourself that question and contemplate, what is your soul in your being? How would you find it? And I'll answer that in the course of this video. How I do want to start is by tying it into the biblical theme of losing one's soul and saving one's soul. Before either one of it can happen, we have to know what the soul is. And so the journey, the human journey, is the journey of searching for the lost treasure, or searching for the lost pearl. There's a parable in the Bible about the treasure and the pearl. And it truly is a journey. To bring it into the context of Christianity, let me say up front that Christianity doesn't have a clue about the soul and how to save it. By the time we are introduced to the quote unquote gospel of salvation and introduced to biblical teaching and introduced to quote unquote God or Jesus through the Christian channels, our soul is long lost. We are like the prodigal that has gone out into the world, and our soul is non-existent at that point. By non-existent, I mean it's in total non-awareness. And like I say, by the time we are exposed to biblical or Christian teachings, we are in a pseudo personality. This pseudo self has developed, which is commonly referred to as our ego. We're very much in our mind, in our intellect, in our logical senses. And we receive the good news with this thing here. This is the old Adam. And we make logical and intellectual, mainly intellectual, and a little bit of emotional connection to the message, to what is being conveyed. But it is a complete illusion and a complete deception, and it does not involve the soul whatsoever. I can say with 100% accuracy that this is a broad brush statement, but every Christian is functioning from their mind. Your relationship with God is from your mind, from your pseudo self. And it's a deception. You're wasting your time. Yes, you're having a good time. Yes, you have wonderful experiences, but your soul is still lost. Now, to go on, let me try and explain what your soul is and when it ended up being lost, and hopefully I can convey how to retrieve it and save it. So essentially, if I asked you again, what is your soul? Where is your soul? Where would you point to? What part of you is indicative of your soul? I would say probably, if I assigned a chakra to it, I would maybe place it with the sacral chakra. Actually, your soul is embodied in all of your chakras, in all of our chakras. But anyways, besides all that metaphysical stuff, I'm going to try and pinpoint it for you. First of all, when did our soul go missing? Let's say missing instead of lost. When did it fade out of the picture? Okay, we'll have to go before our human incarnation. Our soul descended out of heaven as the will of God, as the consciousness of God. And upon incarnation, upon being born and coming into this material world as a human being, that's when the soul is losing connection. And it's not, maybe not right at that moment, but that's where it begins, where the losing of our soul begins. And by losing, I mean we're losing awareness. We're losing awareness of our divine nature, divine spark, of our sovereign will. You might say, how does a baby have sovereign will? Exactly. You had sovereign will as you descended out of the heavenly dimensions. You descended into the material world, into the dense world of matter. You enter in and you have lost your will. You've lost your sovereign will. Because now you are entirely dependent on the nurture of the outside world. And as a baby, you're very much connected to your soul. You're very much connected to your gut, to your emotions, to your belly. And it's basically your brain in the early development. Your gut is your brain. Your gut is your identity. Your gut is your soul. But as you grow and develop into the human, and now you're dependent on the outside world to nurture you and to love you, you lose the aspects of your soul. And as you grow into a toddler and a child, it accelerates, and you find that you have to abandon your soul more and more to receive the care, to receive the nurturing, to receive the love. You basically have to sell out your own soul. You have to sell out your own will. You have to sell out your own nature. You have to sell out your own sovereignty. Like I said, the baby doesn't have any sovereignty. That's how the sovereign soul has lost its autonomy. Simply, not by doing anything bad, but by simply coming into this earth dimension. We have lost entirely our soul sovereignty and become dependent. And so the journey then begins. The journey of self-abandoning begins as a baby. We learn that as children, we learn that we have to put our own will down to receive the attention from others. And so we learn to suppress our own will. We learn to suppress our own nature. And it's so hard to explain the soul because you're now hearing it through your ego, which is not your soul, and you think your ego persona is you, but that's not your true you. So we learn to self-abandon, soul abandon, by suppressing our will, suppressing what would be natural to us, suppressing our gut feeling in order to please for acceptance in return. And let's get to our adult stage. Our soul, our innate being, our gut feeling, the person that we would have been if we had not had to suppress all of that, is completely gone. So now we're full-fledged people pleasers and God pleasers, and we're not at all paying attention to what our gut tells us, what our will might be. We have surrendered our will. We have surrendered the will of our soul, not the will of our ego, because every one of us, we think we have surrendered our will, but we just taken on a new will, that of ego. So anyways, we surrendered our sovereignty in order to please others, in order to receive their graces, to receive their mercy, to receive their attention, to receive their love. We had to bend and twist ourselves. We had to manipulate ourselves into being something else in order to receive love. Excuse me. And while we do this, while we have done this with our parents, with our friends, with our peers, with our co-workers, with our bosses, the worst one is having to do it with God. What did you have to suppress in order to please God? You had to suppress your soul. And the notion that somehow our soul is evil and we have to keep it under submission to please God, that is an error. What you have to keep under submission is your ego. And most of all, your Christian ego. These are two completely, entirely different worlds we're talking about here. And a lot of people will probably not even get what I'm saying here. My good Christian friends, you are not in your soul and you have not saved your soul, and you can wait till the cows come home for Jesus to save your soul. He cannot save your soul. You must save what you have lost in the first place. Only you can, because you are the one that self-abandoned. Not knowingly. I'm not saying this to shame or blame you. I'm saying this to give you something to work with. I'm handing you the roadmap of how you can retrieve your soul when you trace it back to your childhood and remember the the times. Maybe you can't remember them in detail, but remember the earliest memory that you can recapture of where you had to manipulate yourself into people pleasing so that you would receive attention and care and love. Those are the incidences that you now have to retrieve and undo and try and remember what your gut instinct would have wanted you to do, but you couldn't, because then you would have jeopardized the attention. Then you would not have gotten what you truly desired. That's what you need to unravel in order to find your soul, your true, authentic being. That soul that came out of heaven, that will of God, that is your will of God. But you suppressed it and you sold it. You sold out to do someone else's will, and we call that someone else God. But because we've placed God outside of ourselves and didn't consider our soul to be that very God, we went into error, and even we went into the greatest soul abandonment. And this is how our soul must be saved. You must do it. You must abandon the external idea of God, of pleasing God. This whole thing of reading and studying the Bible and parroting it to someone else in the name of teaching others. You have to forget all that. That is not how you will ever retrieve your soul. You have to do the hard work. You have to go back into the painful, into the belly of the fish, like Jonah, and retrieve those painful incidences and memories and undo them. And forgive yourself and release your soul. It was not willful and bad to be in your will, in your soul's will. Can you imagine? You can't even imagine what the mature soul would look like, because you've never allowed it to have that experience. Our ego hijacked our soul, but it was all done in unconsciousness. It was done simply out of reflex. So anyways, so I'm handing you the roadmap of how you can save your soul. You have to stop pleasing an external God. You have to stop pleasing this separated idea of God in heaven. That God in heaven came down into this dimension as your soul, incarnated into flesh. You can overlay your story with Jesus' story. Remember, he came out of heaven, became a baby in Mary's womb, was born of a woman. We have the very same journey, just like Jesus. We have to come here and seek that which was lost, our own soul, our divinity. So, yeah, I hope this makes some kind of sense. I see this is very long. My God, 20 minutes already. But it's an important topic, and I hope you stayed with me for this long. So put away the books and open the book of life, which is the book of your life, and go back in the book, open the book of remembrance. Those are even actual titles in the Bible: the book of remembrance, the book of life. That is your book of life. Go back into the remembrance of when you sold out your soul and retrieve those memories, and have the awareness now of what you need to do different in order not to sell out, in order not to self-abandon anymore, and become acquainted with your true being, your true divine soul, the true will of God. So I hope that helps. Namaste, and have a wonderful journey.